In this tutorial, I want to briefly touch on the concept of referencing an object into another scene. Now, what I mean by referencing is where we take a file that we've created elsewhere, make modifications to it elsewhere, and then we bring it into a scene in Maya. Then, if we continue to make modifications to the original file, in Maya, it will always update to reflect whatever those changes are to that referenced file. It's kind of like in video editing software, for instance, if you were to have a video that's on your timeline that's linked to an actual video file on your computer, and you make changes to that video file on your computer, you would expect that the next time that you open up your video editing software, that you would see the updated changes from the source video on your timeline as well. It works very much the same way. So here is our previous door that we did in the last lesson, and the reason why I point this out and I've kept it is just because it's important to see this as an object that we have changed since last time, right? Where we have the it's been changed from its original default, so we know what those changes have been. So let's just go ahead and create a new scene, and we won't save that. What we're going to do is we're going to go in and import the original door that we had, right? So this is the version where everything was a single piece, right? And it doesn't swing open or anything like that. And I'm just going to move this over to the side. And I'm also going to bring in the referenced version. So I've saved out that scene, and I'm just going to go ahead and import. And in this case, it's actually a Maya scene, and I saved it out as door setup. Now, this is just importing it. I'm also going to go ahead and reference it in. So to reference in a scene, we go to File, and we could either go to the Reference Editor or just to Create Reference option box. I'm going to go ahead and open up the Reference Editor. And this is just a little easy to use window where we manage the references, the referenced objects in our scene. So I can start out by clicking on this button here, which is just to create a reference. It means we're going to go find a file on our computer that we want to bring in as a reference. And so we're just going to go back through this list of um, everything that I have on my computer here. And let's go find our doors and my scenes. There we go, door setup. All right, and so now we have that there, and this right here, if we click on this here, and I hit W to get to my translate tool, this is just telling me what the references are in the scene. But if I look over here in my outliner, I can see that there's a little bit of a different icon between what was the just the file we imported versus the one that we referenced. It has this little blue marker next to it. So I'm just going to move that over. All right, so this is the strict original file from the OBJ. This is the imported door, and this is the referenced door. Okay, so we would expect that the two doors that have been imported and referenced are going to behave with that same opening and closing mechanism that I set up before, right? So if I were to go in and rotate that, I get the same thing. But here's the cool thing. Let's think about it this way. If I have a scene, or actually if I have multiple scenes, where I'm using this same door over and over and over again, but all of a sudden, in production, I decide that I need to change, let's say, the color of the door, or the texture on the door, or just some aspect about the door, then instead of having to go through in every scene that has this door in it and make that change on every scene, I could just make that change once in the referenced file, and it will automatically populate everywhere in every one of those scenes that's referencing it. So let's just, for the sake of example here, go in. We're just going to save this scene out as a temporary thing. So we'll save scene as, and we're just going to put it in here as a door reference test, right? And I'm just going to go back and open up the door setup file. Now this is the file that we are currently referencing in. All right, there's our door. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to select a face, and I'm just going to right click on that and say assign new material. I'm just going to assign it. I'm just doing this really quickly, not really too much explaining what I'm doing, but I just want to put a new material on there. Let's just say it's blue, something like that. So just that one frame is blue. And maybe what we'll do is we'll go in and actually just change the scale of these top two parts of the frame, right? So it's some kind of a weird frame like this, right? And maybe at the same time we decide that we want these handles to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to center the pivot here. I have some, by the way, I have some basically shortcuts that I've put into my custom shelf here. One of these is center pivot, which is accessible by going to modify center pivot. All right, and actually I don't necessarily want it to center from there. I'm just going to go ahead and move my pivot point there, and we'll just scale it up from here. So I just want it to make that handle bigger there. Right? So it's just going to be this one handle on this one side that's going to be bigger. The one on the back side can stay small. All right, so let's just say we save this now. Let's go back into our previous scene that we had, the door reference test, which is what is referencing in this scene. So what we get now, remember this is the one that we just imported in, but this is the one that we referenced in. And as a result, it has inherited all those changes that we had made. And of course, this is just the original one that we had to do all the work on. So that's quite cool. I mean, what it means basically is that, especially when you have scenes where you're taking the same object and putting it into multiple scenes, you can really easily keep track of things. And especially if you're using this reference more than once in the same scene, Maya will treat it in memory as if it's just a single object and can actually reduce the amount of memory that's necessary for Maya to handle the scene. Which it makes for some optimization as well. Where this is really cool is when you're working on a character rig and you reference in the character. If you need to make any changes to your character color or even shape at times, if you do it on the referenced file, then when you change it on the referenced file, all the scenes that are referencing it will also adapt those changes as well. And that means that also if you have already animated on those files, the animation will just adapt to the new changes on the referenced file. Usually, if you don't do it that way, you would actually have to go back and redo all of your animation, which would be less than desirable. So referencing can be really, really powerful, and just wanted to point it out here in this really quick and simple example.